This is a oral history interview with Mrs. Myrtle McKee at her home on 12/9/85. The interviewer is Johanna Cooper. All right, Mrs. McKee, what year were you born?
I was born in 1908.
You remember which county?
Piatt.
In Piatt County.
Mm-hmm.
Where were your parents born?
Well, Mother was born in Indiana, and Dad was born in Pennsylvania.
And where did they eventually settle?
In Saragordo.
In Saragordo. The nationality?
Well, Scotch, Irish, and Dutch.
What type of work did your father do?
Well, when Dad came to this part of the country, he worked as a farmhand. He was only 17, and I don't know how many years he did that, but he used to drive for a doctor, and he drove the dray team, which is a delivery team for a man. And then he was policeman for 20 years or more.
Where was he a policeman at?
In Saragordo.
In Saragordo.
City cop.
A city cop. Very good. What type of work did your mother do?
Just housework. Homemaker.
You had how many brothers and sisters?
I had 5 brothers and sisters.
So, what was a typical day like for your mother? I'm sure she had a lot of work to do.
Well, Mother was a good mother and a good wife, and she was up and had breakfast ready for her husband. And just ordinary housework, what anybody does. Got the kids off to school.
Mm-hmm.
And Mother was a great pie baker. And she was sort of noted for her cherry pies. And she baked her own bread during the war. Loved to come home to that homemade bread.
Did your mother have a garden?
Oh, between Mother and Dad, yes. Mm-hmm. They had a nice garden.
Did you children have any chores to do?
Well, not too much. I can't remember. I was a baby in the family, and I don't remember having to do any work, really, around, because the rest of them did it for me. Until my sister, just older than me, got married, and she had always washed dishes and helped with the evening meal especially, and that fell to me when she got married.
How did your mom deal when any of the kids got sick?
Oh, I don't know. Just dealt with it like any.
Was there ever any illness like that had to be quarantined?
Mm-hmm.
Or
I had scarlet fever when I was about 8, I believe it was, and my brother had to stay home from school, and he was quarantined with me. We couldn't let anybody in or go out. Dad had to go to Grandma's and live, and so did the girls, my other brother.
When you were about 14, I noticed you on your pictures that darling bobbed haircut. Was that in style?
Dutch boy.
The Dutch boy. What was sort of the clothing trend like for?
Oh, about that time. Oh, well, I think dresses were worn just below the knee. And then, in about a year from then, when I was about 16, they wore them just a little bit longer, and I remember having a dress with side drapes on it that hung below the hem of the skirt. Just a ripple, that hung down. 4 of them, I remember. And they wore glove silk hose, and I had some that had lace stripes in them, and black satin slippers. Now that was my Sunday to go meeting clothes.
Sunday go meeting clothes, darling. That's darling.
My oldest sister had since she was 16, and she was awful good to buy things for my other two, my other sister and I.
Did you ever have a job?
No, I never did.
When you went to school, when you were small, how old were you? Do you remember? I mean, at that time?
When I was 6.
At 6.
Mm-hmm.
What type of school did you go to?
Just a public school, first grade public school.
Mm-hmm.
See, they didn't have kindergarten back then.
Mm-hmm. About how many pupils to one classroom?
Oh dear, I expect there was 20 or more.
Mm-hmm. What do you remember most about, let's say, a nice, fun day? What did you kids do for fun, for amusement, or?
Well, we had to make our own fun.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have money to go any place much, and no car. And so if we wanted to take a walk, we walked down the railroad track or out the cemetery.
The cemetery.
But I can remember playing Mumbly Peg and marbles and things like that. Black Man and, just ordinary kids games.
Yeah.
But we didn't have many toys. Mother did manage to always have something for us for Christmas, but we didn't have very much to do with, and in those days we didn't have money to go to the movie or do much of anything. One time my dad took me on the interurban to Decatur to see the parade. The circus parade was in town, and they used to always parade through the town before the circus time, We didn't have the money to go to the circus, so we went to the parade and then went out to his sister's visit. That was a big treat. Very unusual treat.
Oh, yeah. Did your families or relatives have get-togethers?
Oh, yes, family dinners at Thanksgiving and Christmas and such.
In comparison to Christmas now and then when you were a child growing up, what was your Christmas like?
Very much the same. You cooked a big dinner. You cooked all day for a day or two, beforehand. and the gifts, of course, the children always made it fun, with opening gifts and all. We always try to have gifts for the children if we don't have any for the adults.
Did you have Halloween in those days?
Yes, but I didn't participate. I don't remember ever participating, but my brother did. And they'd go out and get upset outhouses, And they'd take a buggy or something and put it up on top of a building, and oh golly, just so many things.
Well, they enjoyed themselves, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
How'd you keep warm in the wintertime?
Well, it wasn't easy. We had a coal stove and a cook stove in the kitchen for heat and cooking. In the living room, we'd have a heating stove. And mighty cold to get up of a morning and start that fire going.
Yeah. Wasn't it cold when you first jumped into bed?
Oh,
at
yeah.
night?
Yeah, the bed would be cold, yes. We didn't even have electricity until I was, I was probably 10 years old before we even had electric lights.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Dad rented all those years. And finally, in about 1923, he bought a house. And we kind of redid it as best we could afford and put in electric lights and a bathroom.
Oh, yeah.
And
That was nice to bring the bathroom in the house.
That was really something.
Oh, yes. How long did you all together go to school?
I went through first year high and about 3 months in the second year high, and then I got married.
Going to marriage. How did you meet? It's not on yet.
Oh.
Mr. McKee.
Mm-hmm.
When did you and him?
Is it on?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, he was a cousin of my sister's husband, and a double cousin, in fact. And she was having a family dinner for her husband's birthday, and so his folks were invited, and so was hers. So that's how we all got together at the same house. And that's how I met him. And he had a car, and that's the first fella I had gone with or met, or,
Yeah.
I was only 14, that had a car. And, of course, that impressed me. And anyhow, the young folks at the dinner all piled into this car, and he let me drive, and we went for a joyride. And from then on, we started dating.
And about when did you and him get married?
It was 2.5 years later. I was 16.
What was your wedding like?
We had a double wedding, and of course, we didn't tell the folks. We ran off and got married. Not exactly. We didn't run very far. We just went over to Covington, Indiana. But my brother and his wife and us were the very best friends. His girlfriend and I were his very best friends. And so we went and broached the subject to them of getting married, and they was thinking about the same thing. So we said, let's go and do it together.
Uh-huh.
So we did, and was married in the church parsonage.
Where did you and your husband first live?
With his mother.
Mm-hmm.
His mother was a widow, and she had sold some machinery, and people couldn't pay for it and had to take it back. And Harold was working in the Wabash shops in Decatur, but he took a leave of absence and run that machinery for his mother till got it sold again. And I didn't like that very much, but I put up with it. So we lived with her for quite a while. And then in the next spring, he bought the garage in town. He was quite a mechanic anyhow, and it was for sale, and it was sold real cheap. And so he bought the garage, and there was a house that went with it. So we got to move into our own home.
You had your first home then, yeah. Out of this marriage, you had
one daughter.
one daughter.
Yeah.
What was that like, Mrs. McKee, during expecting a baby in comparison to now? I'm sure it was different in my time.
They didn't tell you not to gain weight like they do now,
Mm-hmm.
And I ate like a horse and got as big as a horse. And you didn't go to the hospital in those days. Harold's mother was a practical nurse, and she took care of me right there at home, had the baby there at home. And, of course, the doctor delivered her, but she took care of me.
Did you belong to any church or organization?
Methodist Church. I belonged to the Christian church when I was a child. That's where my mother went to church. And then I joined the Methodist Church.
Any organizations that were connected with Monticello? The Depression. That must have left something.
It was not severe for us.
Severe.
We had, my husband was working, and we had the necessities. We were always very saving, and didn't expect too much, but we didn't suffer at all, really.
Do you remember people that did have a hard time during that time?
Well, people who were used to living extravagantly did, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the First World War, I can remember my mother complaining when they had to have substitute sugar and substitute flour and things that way. They used beet sugar and I don't know what kind of flour, but it wasn't. And she did her own baking at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and she didn't like that at all because it didn't make good bread. But we never really suffered, but there was a lot of people did. But I think it's because they didn't know how to manage.
Yeah. You did say you remember about the First World War.
Yes, I remember quite a bit about it.
How was that changed around in your life or your people around you?
Well, of course, I was just a child.
Yeah.
And I can remember especially Armistice Day. And my mother was a great homebody, and I couldn't hardly get her to go anywhere. And boy, when that armistice was signed, though, and of course they had a big celebration uptown, and she was really up and a-going to that. We just really were so pleased, Just
No one in your family
Right.
was in the First World War?
Oh, my brother had to register, but he wasn't called.
That was good.
Yeah, he wasn't quite old enough to go sooner.
Now, later on, how did it affect you? Like, the radio would come in and
Well, I guess
life changed.
the first radio we ever had was when we moved into our own home, I guess it was, after we lived in Argenta at the time. And we got a small set with a speaker on it,
Mhm. Was there any favorite programs?
Betty and Bob.
Betty and Bob.
I don't remember much about it, really. But we thought it was quite an invention.
And cars and airplanes, did you think that they were going to survive? Or, like the first airplane maybe that you
Well,
saw?
of course, cars were pretty, plentiful by that time. I never thought much about airplanes because I had no contact with anybody that had them. So I didn't really think too much about them. As a child, that is.
Yeah. When you, did you care about women's rights?
No, not as a child.
Did you ever go to a radio show or a movie, in the first movie that you ever went to after you were married, or?
I don't remember when the first movie was. We used to go to the movie when I was going with Harold. But
Were there silent movies, or?
there was a movie house in Saragorda, and I don't remember when the first one was that I went. We used to go to that once in a while.
Did your daughter, was there a vaccination when your daughter was, after she was born? If there any childhood diseases, were there vaccinations then?
I believe so. I know I have a vaccination. When I was a child, I had to be vaccinated. Mm-hmm. And I think she did too, but I'm not real sure. I don't recall any scar. They said if it didn't leave a scar, it didn't take.
So like if your daughter, did she ever have the whooping cough or?
Yes, she did.
Mm-hmm. Now that's rough to have the whooping
Yes,
cough.
she did.
How did you cope with that?
Well, just coped. I don't know. I remember we wanted to go to the Standard Oil picnic and couldn't take her, so we left her with my mother and went to the Standard Oil picnic while she had it. She had it for quite a long time, too. It seemed like longer than usual. But she didn't seem to have any bad after effects.
Mm-hmm. Did she have any other childhood diseases?
Oh, I think she had the measles and
the old-fashioned measles?
Chicken pox.
How did they used to bring a fever down? When a child had a fever, an adult, or?
Generally with ice packs. Cool bathing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that works.
Mm-hmm.
What president did you most vividly recall, or that was one of your favorite, or it stands out most in your mind?
I remembered Wilson. I didn't like him, but I remembered him.
Do you remember one you liked?
Oh, let's see. Hoover, I remember him. Kids didn't pay much attention to politics.
No. But I mean, like as you were,
growing older
and already a mother and wife, which president would stick out most in your mind that would?
I don't know. Jack Kennedy got a lot of publicity, but I never quite went along with all the praise he got. And Nixon turned out to be a joner.
Mm-hmm. A winner.
After we had been so faithful to put him in there.
Now you do remember, can you remember Pearl Harbor?
Just slightly, just remember getting the news.
Mm-hmm. You don't remember what you were doing at that time?
Well, we lived in Champaign. One thing we knew was a friend of ours who was in the service was there. It was on one of the ships. And we was anxious to hear from him. And we did hear from him. And he said it was really rough. He said he prayed more than he had ever prayed in his life. It was just hell. Terrible. And he was a very poor boy there in Ivesdale when we moved over there. And he didn't like to go to school, and Harold would take him on the truck with him and talk to him, and he bought him a whole new outfit of clothes and if he'd go back to school. So he did for a short while, but he didn't last long. And his mother was dead. She died the day we went to Ivesdale, moved to Ivesdale. His mother died.
Oh.
and was buried that day, and his dad was an alcoholic, and his sisters weren't much account, and so you couldn't expect too much out of the child, but we tried to help him.
The Second World War, what was it, the feeling about in the country over here?
People were very patriotic back in those days. I can remember we kids used to gather around the player piano, and play one of those pieces, overseas, over there, and all those war songs. We loved them all, just loved, and we just sing at the top of our voice and have the best time. And then we generally went to the Moore boys. My friend and I were both going with the Moore boys then. And their mother would make homemade ice cream, and they had a player piano, see, and that's where we would have our fun on Sundays, going and doing that.
Well, was there any place where, when you you got married young, but for the young people to go dancing and...
Oh, heavens, no.
No? Well, they still don't have it. Kids here in town, no place.
No.
But what was the general feeling in this country about America getting into the war, Second World War?
Well, as I say, everybody was patriotic, so they were upholding their country. They would do anything for their country. And it wasn't the same feeling that people have today, because ever since Vietnam, why, they'll never, I don't think, feel the same about war.
Do you know anyone that was in the Korean War?
Well, not the Korean War, I don't believe, but the Vietnamese War, yes. I lost a grandson by marriage. My granddaughter's husband, first husband, was killed over the Bay of Da Nang. He was a helicopter pilot that transported troops. It was his fourth trip that day into the center of the fight. He was just returning to base. Down they took him.
What a waste, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was terrible. It's the fourth time he was shot down, though. He was lucky the other times it didn't get him. But this time it got him. And he was over the bay. So it was several days before they got the body out. It was such a long period there before the funeral, and before they could get the body over here and we could have the funeral, and we had a visitation here, and then took him to his home in Chicago and had another one up there. It was such a long, drawn-out thing. We just really were worn out.
What was the general feeling about the Vietnam War?
It was so useless, so very useless, and we blamed United States for it. It was just the money. That's all they were after. It did absolutely no good. It was just a lot of harm.
You and your husband were blessed with a daughter. Now, do you have any results from that?
What do you mean? Oh, I have 4 great-grandchildren, and two more than that are step-grandchildren. Yes. she had three girls, see.
So you now have 4 great-grandchildren and 3 grandchildren.
Uh-huh.
A book for your daughter and for your grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
Well, I wouldn't call it on my own. Exactly.
Okay.
No, I'll tell you how I happened to have it. My granddaughter bought me one of these books and presented it to me and wanted me to fill it out. And I thought, well, that is really something. And I went back to the bookstore and got 2 more, so I'd have one for each granddaughter, and proceeded. And it took a lot of searching and looking up dates, but I have a box full of stuff like that, and I went through that, and then I had to go through all my pictures, which had been gone through just a year ago, because my granddaughter and my daughter together made me up that great big book over there for our 60th wedding anniversary.
Yeah, what is it you call this book? The big book?
Just a scrapbook.
A scrapbook.
Of our life.
Yeah.
And they used my better pictures. The whole thing full of pictures. And so it was quite a chore and took many hours of work. But my granddaughters are all college graduates, and they have always been very nice to us, and they seem to appreciate everything we do. And they love to hear their grandpa tell stories of when he was young. So I'm sure this sort of thing will interest all of them.
And what is it called?
It's called Grandmother Remembers. And it's a pretty complete history. It's it has the spaces for everything, you know, and the family tree and the parents and the grandparents and all. And as your daughter grows up, as is your married life, you know, and then as your daughter grows up, and then the final one in the back here is let's see. Grandfather would want you to know, so grandfather would have his little input, you know. So he's in the process now of
That's wonderful.
Fixing some. He didn't want to write it in here, so he's typing it off, paste it in.
Well, I see you have a lot of pictures there.
Yeah, so many of them are, they're not as choice as I would like to have. And then there's sheets back here that I could put some, you see, treasures I have saved for you. That's like Judy's engagement. And Judy's our youngest granddaughter. This is I forgot to mention, I told about our trailer trip.
Tell me about your vacation. You've gone on a vacation.
Well, when we retired from Champaign, and we went to Arkansas and bought a place on the lake and lived down there for 5.5 years. And by that time the new had worn off, and we sort of wanted to come back home. And so we put our place up for sale, and before we got moved, my mother fell and hurt herself real bad, and we had to come in a hurry.
What year was that?
That was in 65. And we had sold the place, but we wasn't quite ready to, but we came anyhow, see, and Mother passed away while we were here, see, and we, Harold went back and finished things up down there, And we lived, stayed at Nadine's, our daughter. We were there for 8 weeks. Well, she loved to have us because she was working and I did all the housework. So, anyhow, in the meantime, though, while we bought a lot in town and got the cesspool and the lights and the gas and everything.
Where was that?
In Bement. And moved our trailer in there. And there was a garage already on this lot. And we could use it for storage. And we had a travel trailer, see.
Mm-hmm.
It was I forget how long it was, 22 feet or something. But it was a nice travel trailer. And so we lived in our travel trailer. And we knew we was between homes, see. We sold the one down there. We had already sold the one we had here before we went down there. So we didn't have a home. Mm-hmm. And so we knew we was going to do a little traveling while we didn't have a home to bother with. And
where did you go on your vacation?
Oh, this is a vacation.
That is the vacation.
Summer.
Okay, all summer. Okay.
And we left in June and went to the East Coast and came back across the northern part of the States and into Canada and back down to Banff and up on the Continental Divide, clear up to Jasper, Canada, back down and clear over to Vancouver and to the west coast at California and cut across country there back towards home and got snowbound in September in Steamboat Springs, Colorado.
Oh my goodness.
So we were gone about 3 months and got back in time to help Jack harvest the crops. And we had our trailer moved in town there. See, I mean, of course we had the trailer with us, but we put it there on our lot.
Yeah.
And we, when we left, we had been over here and tried to buy a lot here because we knew we was going to build, but we didn't know just where yet. And this ground was not opened up yet.
That's back in Monticello now.
Here,
Mm-hmm.
this was a big pasture, and they were going to put the pavement in and open up and measure off for lots.
Mm-hmm. Who was selling the Stoddard Circle?
Charlie Norris.
Was that his ground, or did he buy it from somebody else?
Well, they call it a division.
Okay.
He owned it at one time.
Mm-hmm.
He or his wife won. And so we went. We left then in the last of November. We went back. We started out and we went down to Arkansas and visited a little bit and went on to Arizona and spent the winter in our travel trailer in a trailer park,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and just really had a good time. And when we came back in the spring, we came to Monticello right away, and this was all divided up. So we bought this lot and started our plans to build. And we drew our own plans, and we divided up the jobs to different contractors and built it very reasonable. And that's one way you can save.
Oh yeah, subcontracting.
And did a lot of the work ourselves, all we could, and especially the finishing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that trailer trip was really something. We went 22,000 miles, and I mean, we made a lot of friends, had more fun. There was another couple from here met us at Bemidji, Minnesota, and went up into Canada with us and clear over to Oregon. And then they left us, and we went on, and they went on. So
well, that was a
we really
very
had
exciting vacation, huh?
yeah, it was really nice. We had every convenience that you could want in that travel trailer. We had a bathtub and bath, and just like they do here, it had twin beds, and we were just real cozy.
Oh, yeah, they make them that way now.
Uh-huh. It was really an experience. We loved it.
You did, at one time, finally did go to work and got yourself a job. Where did you work? After your daughter was older?
Or it's when my daughter
your
went
daughter
to
went
nurse's
to
training.
That's right. She went to.
And I was so lonesome.
Yeah.
And so I went uptown and got me a job at the W. Lewis and Company. And my husband didn't like it a bit. He didn't want me to work.
What did you do for W. Lewis Company?
I was just a salesperson. But it got me out of the house. That was my idea. And I only worked in the winter time, a couple of winters. And I liked it, but he didn't like it. He finally told me if I didn't quit, he'd get a divorce.
Well, that was time to quit, huh? So now you and your husband spend your retired life
Taking it easy.
taking it easy. Well, that's what it's for. That's what
At
it's
this
for.
point in the game, you don't have much choice.
No.
He had a heart attack 6 years ago. It will be 7 years this summer. And I had one last spring.
Oh.
So that slows you down.
Oh, yeah.
So you just aren't capable of doing the things you'd been doing before.
But from the looks of your house, which is beautiful, beautiful home,
Well, thank you.
and immaculate, you have still have got a big job.
Yeah, it's a job, but
Do you have any hobbies?
I like to sew. And
Dressmaking?
well, I can make most anything, but I don't do a lot of it anymore. I'm too nervous anymore. Seems like I don't. I can't settle myself down to one thing for too long. I didn't used to be that way, but I am anymore. So I don't try to do a lot of sewing.